Are you ready to break through the mental barriers holding you back? Welcome to the Mind Mastered Secrets of Excellence with Don Grant. Since 2001, Don has been guiding elite athletes like PGA Tour champions, Olympians, and world champions, and everyday individuals toward peak performance. With a proven track record, including helping Vijay Singh win the 2008 FedEx Cup, and her PGA Tour clients averaging a 219% increase in earnings. Dawn knows what it takes to succeed. She's the inventor of the Mind Mastered app, author of 7 Strokes in 7 Days, a sought-after speaker worldwide, and the proud owner of Amelia Shotgun Sports in Northeast Florida. Join us as we dive into powerful strategies, inspiring interviews, and Dawn's unique insights to help you excel in every area of your life, sports, career, relationships, and beyond. And now, here's your host, Don Grant.
Alrighty, folks. Thank you for joining us. This is Don Grant, the Mind Master Secrets of Excellence. I love all your feedback. Thank you for following. And I have really been enjoying getting to know people who are excelling in different areas of their lives. Most of you know I do work with athletes on the zone state, the mental game. And so I do enjoy talking to different kinds of athletes to pick their brain on how they've been experiencing what could be the zone state, what gets them out of it, what challenges they face, and then overall, because we have the same brain in life that we have in sport, so what challenges people are overcoming and some of those secrets that we can share. So today I have Dean Karnazes with me, and super excited because talk about some excellence. Dean has done some amazing physical things, more than I could ever imagine doing, running 350 miles in 80 hours in 44 minutes without sleep. That is what I want to know about. And then a bunch of other really cool things related to running. And Dean, thank you for being here. Please give us some of your highlights. What are I see trophies all around you there.
Well, I've been running marathons and ultra marathons for about the past 3 decades. And I guess I'll digress and say an ultra marathon in Latin, ultra means beyond. So an ultra marathon is anything beyond a marathon. And a marathon is a fixed distance of 26.2 miles. So an ultra marathon might be 30 miles, 50 miles, 100 miles, 200 miles. Anything beyond a marathon is considered an ultra marathon. And I've raced and competed in these types of races on all 7 continents of Earth twice, including doing things like running 50 marathons in all of the 50 United States in 50 consecutive days. So I've really, pushed the limits of physical and mental endurance.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I cannot wait to get in your head. Every continent twice. And I thank you for defining ultra marathon, because I know not everybody knows for sure what that is. And if I haven't said it already, thank you for being here. So I like to just start from the beginning, because I like to try to understand the person and see what got them to where they are. So, at what age did you start running and why?
I have an interesting backstory in that my earliest childhood recollections are running home from kindergarten. So
Were you
I
being
remember.
chased or anything?
I actually was trying to get away from this imprisonment I saw at school. Unfortunately, I remember sitting in class and everyone telling me I should sit still and pay attention. So trying to be a good boy and sitting still and paying attention. And then when the bell rang, I thought I'm free. And I
Yes.
remember running out of the classroom and, this was in Los Angeles back in, I don't want to date myself, but it was the 60s. So it was safer for a 5-year-old kid to run, say, a mile home from kindergarten back then. But I remember I just how the air felt on my skin, and how
Yeah.
I remember this lake I used to run by in this park, and I remember all these things from being a little boy. And then I ran competitively up until I was a freshman in high school, and we won our the championships. And at 14, I said, "Okay, that's as far as I'll ever take my running career," and I stopped running altogether. I thought, I have better ways to spend my time than running. So fast forward to my 30th birthday. So I somehow finished high school. I finished college. I went to graduate school, and then I went and got an MBA. And I had a very comfortable corporate job in San Francisco.
Okay.
And on the night of my 30th birthday, I was in a bar with my buddies doing what most people do on their 30th birthday. I
Right.
was drinking. And at midnight, I told them, "Hey, I'm leaving." And they said, "What do you mean? It's midnight. Let's get another round of tequila to celebrate." And I said, "No, I'm going to run 30 miles to celebrate my 30th birthday instead."
Oh,
And
wow.
they looked at me and they looked at me and they said, "But you're not a runner. You're drunk." And I said, "I am, but I'm still going to do it." And I literally walked out of the bar. I'll never forget. I didn't own running gear, but I had these comfortable, like, silk boxer shorts, these silk underwear,
Yeah.
peeled off my pants and threw them down the alleyway. And I just started stumbling, heading south into the night,
Oh,
drunk,
my.
knowing a town called Half Moon Bay was 30 miles away from San Francisco. And that night forever changed the course of my life.
That is an unbelievable story. So I am curious. So if you rewind, you hadn't ran in what, 15, 20 years or something like that? And how far did you run, you know, up when you had stopped earlier in your life? Was it ever 30 miles?
Oh, I mean, cross country, when I was in high school it was about 2.5 miles.
What in the world?
So
That tequila did it.
tequila, and I was, I was very dissatisfied with life. I am,
Yeah.
maybe 30 years too young to have a midlife crisis, but I think I had kind of a breakdown because
Yeah.
I thought, if I went and got a good education and I landed a good job and I had a fat paycheck and, stock options and a company car and all those things, I'd be happy.
Right.
And I was miserable. Like, all these things didn't bring me the happiness and the fulfillment I thought they would. And
Right.
I just wanted to do something primal, like something that made me feel alive again. And it manifested as a 30-mile run.
Very interesting. And that whole midlife crisis thing, I think just the feeling of not being fulfilled can happen at any time in our lives. In some way, you were kind of saying it was happening in kindergarten, even, like that it didn't feel like you. It didn't feel like you were fitting into that situation. And in my opinion, that's a lot of what we call midlife crisis is just like, who am I and what am I doing and where am I at and where would I prefer to be and what would I prefer to be doing? And the challenge is figuring out who am I and what do I prefer to be doing? Because we are like on autopilot each day, right? And doing what we're supposed to do and like a little robot going through life.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I think a lot of people live their whole life that way. And
Yeah.
I haven't. I mean, I can never
Yeah.
sit still when I'm always, seeking new challenges and new adventures and, kind of living a semi-nomadic life. But
Yeah.
yeah.
When it's probably 15 years ago or so, and that was the first time I'd been exposed to ultramarathon because I dated a guy that did them regularly, and I just remember being so amazed because I think he had flown or whatever to it seems like it was maybe Colorado or something out there, and he was doing, a bazillion miles, and I just remember thinking, "He's not sleeping." Like, I would go about my day, like, at breakfast and think, "He's running right now." And then, like, lunch or early afternoon, picking up my kids from school or something, I'm like, "He's still running," And then it would be, like, dinner, and I'd be like, "Oh my God." I remember going to movies and watching a whole movie and then thinking, "Oh my God, he's still running." That is amazing to me, really. I think I could probably say of any sport, it's the one that amazes me the most. Of course, there's mountain climbing and all that, but I don't know. Not sleeping and running that long. How do you explain that?
Well, I mean, I think running is very identifiable. Climbing Mount Everest or climbing the north face of K2 or whatever, it's intense, I'm sure, but it's not an everyday experience, right? We're kind of removed from that. But everyone has run a mile, right? It might have been, you got in trouble when you're in school and the teacher said, go out and run around the track.
Right.
But and you know how how much it sucked, right? How tough it
Right.
was. And then you think, God, I could barely run around the track. How's someone out there, running for 24 hours without stopping? It's hard to wrap your head around it because it's so familiar. Running is such a familiar activity with any human being. So I think that's one reason that ultra marathon, ultra running is so fascinating to the general population because you just can't understand it. And when I
Right.
first heard of someone running 100 miles, I thought there was trickery involved. I thought, okay, they get in a car, or there's a bike like hidden behind the bushes, or
Right.
they stop at hotels at night, and they get up the next morning and carry on. But this guy said to me, no, nobody. The gun goes off and you start running, and you finish when you cross the finish line, if you cross the finish line. But it's one nonstop run.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you're on tequila. You run 30 miles. How long did that take you?
Well, I mean, I say I ran, but let's be honest. You know, I,
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
shuffling, I was walking, I was
Yeah.
stumbling. I mean, I was a
Yeah.
mess.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
ran all night. I remember, the sun. I saw the sun come up the next morning.
Wow.
So it took me, the good part of 9 hours to run 30 miles,
Yeah.
and I was destroyed. I mean, I was
Yeah.
completely wrecked, and I'd never felt so alive. I don't. This. I just. I came to life that night. I mean, it was as though, God spoke to me and said, "Here's your purpose." I mean, sure, it's not anything sophisticated. It's just running. It's a pretty simple act, but this is why you're here. I mean, this is what you're meant to be doing.
Interesting. I once a year myself and so and this is like same and different, but like my brains relate and a little bit. Once a year, myself and several of my friends used to do this Amelia Island nature walk thing, and we would walk from the south end of the island all the way to the north end, and it would take us about 8 hours. And it was a very leisurely walk. There was no jogging or anything. But I just remember feeling, and I haven't done it in a little while, but I remember feeling so amazing. Now, and of course, my legs were like rubber the next few days. But being outside and just, I guess, connected that whole time, it's so much different than, let's say, being outside for an hour. And, especially because we were walking and we were looking and we were experiencing and we were sometimes having deep, meaningful conversations and other times totally quiet, and so, that period of time I can relate to, not the jogging part. Do you
Well, I
feel
mean,
like that's a big
yeah, I
part? Yeah.
do the same sort of thing I do, by myself, though, is the only difference. So I prefer to run alone in nature, and I commune with nature. I mean, I think that we came from nature, and
Yeah.
99.9% of the people across the globe are completely removed from nature. I mean, we live in, air conditioned houses, we get air conditioned cars, we go to air conditioned offices. I can't live that life. I mean, I have to go out and be in nature just to find who I am, to find myself, to find peace. And I think it's a tragedy that so many people you have lost any sort of relationship with nature. And you saw it just in your adventures you did with your friends. Imagine doing that by yourself, where you're kind of forced not to talk with other people, not to interact with other people, but just to interact with, the landscape and the environment.
Sounds like a challenge that I'm wanting to take on. Like, that sounds pretty amazing. My brain always thinks of analogies and like it's relating and relate. And you're now reminding me of the TV show Alone, where they go and live by themselves, and the challenge, one of the biggest challenges by day, whatever, 50, 60, 90, is being by themselves for so long and all of their thoughts. And again, being really fascinated and into the mind. One of the things I've observed watching different episodes of that, and I imagine this happens to you when you're running, you have to let me know, but all of a sudden, like a lot of childhood memories start popping up and things they have never thought of again, in their lives. And I've come to really appreciate that, meaning we can get so caught up in our day-to-day lives and our to-do lists and our, whether it's social media or the phone or TV or conversations with others or, drama or, whatever it is. that, how often do we really take a true break, like a true break, not I'm still looking at my phone or I'm still checking social media, like a true break where it's you in nature. Um, and I've just been really fascinated with how many things from their lives they start processing and thinking about, and some sad and some happy, and some that they probably would have buried forever if they didn't stop long enough to really work through them. And some people actually leave the show when that starts getting challenging, meaning those old thoughts start coming up and they don't want to deal with them. So is that something that happens when you're running long distance? Do you have a lot of thoughts coming forward from earlier in life and such?
At a point I do, but I try not to think at all. When I do these sort of things, I try to rejuvenate myself by being in the present. So I try not to think about how much further I've got to go, or even which route I'm gonna choose. I try to be in the here and now, the present moment of time, and I
Nice.
try not to reflect on the past. So I try, and this takes discipline, right? To be in the here and now. Our minds are so active, as you said. I mean, even now as we're talking, you're probably thinking, "What's the next question for Dean?" Did I water my plants? What am I gonna have for dinner? Did I feed the dog? But to quiet your mind and just be in the present moment of time, uh, that to me is so cleansing that when I come back out of it and I start having those, thoughts about the past. I mean, let's face it, if you live in the past, you're gonna live in sadness because being alive, being a human is suffering. So probably a lot of the thoughts of the past are gonna be hard thoughts. And if you live in the future, you're gonna have a lot of anxiety. If you're thinking about the future all the time, you're gonna be filled with anxiety. But just to put those aside and just be in the present moment of time, you really feel alive. And honestly, even though I'm by myself and I'm out in the wilderness alone, these are some of the purest moments I've ever had.
Nice. Yeah, what you just touched on is what I teach athletes. It's to be present in moments. And it's really hard for a lot of athletes because, whether it's golf or whatever, they do get caught up in thinking about the miss or what just happened. And so there are these regrets of the past, and then they can worry about their score, the future, or even get too amped up if it appears they're going to win. It's like there's all these games that the conscious mind will play related to future or past. And so, yeah, my training is all about bringing them to the present moment. And it is challenging and it is a discipline. And no wonder you've succeeded so much because you're mastering that concept. And, as you were talking, I was like, well, that makes sense. Compared to that TV show, The Loan, you have to be able to be physically doing well, and at your peak state in order to continue. Processing what you said, that every thought has an effect on your body. So yeah, if you're starting to think of the past and my fifth birthday and nobody showed up for my party, that then has an effect on the body, which can actually decrease your energy and endurance and everything. So um, totally following what you're saying. You absolutely would have to be present. So, and really hard work, right? Um, it was probably 10 years ago now, but for a long time, Buddhist monks didn't really get interviewed or get spoken to or asked questions about their meditation processes. And until about 10 years ago, it might even be longer than that now, but, they got put up to connected to EKGs and such. And when they were asked, when you're meditating 8 hours a day, every day, are you totally clearing your mind? And it was surprising to actually hear them say, the mind isn't 100% quiet. It's that thoughts will come in and they let them pass like clouds. Like they'll come in, but they don't get emotionally attached. They don't like jump onto it and go, oh my gosh, yeah, that's horrible. Or yes, that would be great. Like they don't emotionally attach. They just let them pass through like clouds and recognize them as just traveling through, right? Is that something you do?
Well, it's something that I've learned to do, and I would say somewhat out of necessity because when I was 21, I had a tragedy in my life. My younger sister was killed in a car accident on her 18th birthday.
Mm.
And, and we were really close. She was like my closest confidant, my best friend. And, when she
Mm.
died, uh, it completely unraveled me. And I really never had the tools. I never worked with anyone. I mean, this is, several decades ago. And I just, through my own mental resilience and the pain and the misery that I suffered, I learned to do just what you said, to think of her. But and it's, when something dramatic and traumatic happens and you witness it, you can't erase these things from your mind. I mean, they stay with you. So, and if you think about these things, they're so painful and they cause so much anxiety that I learned that, when these things start to come, just to let them go. Don't delve into the actual memories. Don't try to recreate the scene. And, if you could have done this, maybe this would have happened, this or that. Just to it's a cloud that passes by.
Yes. Yeah.
I think to me,
Sorry
it's
to
more of a reaction to pain. I mean, once you suffer such acute pain like that, you learn this technique just out of survival. I mean, it either kills you or you learn how to adapt and survive. Mm.
Exactly, exactly. I know somebody whose mother passed away within days of giving birth to him, and then the sister took care of him until he was 8, and then she got in a car accident and had chronic brain damage, and then died shortly after. And his father died at 11 when he was 11, and I'm amazed at getting to know him and how he can be present and peaceful in life, meaning out. And I look back and think exactly what you're saying. It's a survival mechanism because you can either get sucked into that and emotionally attached to those traumas and maybe drink yourself to death or do drugs and whatever to disconnect the mind, or you can learn to disconnect yourself from those thoughts, right, and let them pass. People can do it with drugs or things to alter them, or they can learn to do it naturally.
Yeah, but and I also think there's a magic to running. I mean, there's been a lot of studies about PTSD and running and other like using running as therapy. I don't know how it works. I don't, because maybe it's endocannabinoids, but I can tell you that every time I leave the house with 1,000 problems on my shoulders, I come home and when I walk back through the door, somehow the weight has been lifted. I don't know what it is. It just shifts your paradigm in such a way. Maybe it's your mood. I don't know. Maybe it's biochemical. But running is saved my life, and I really mean that literally.
Yeah, yeah. I would be fascinated to see if it's kind of the same processes related to exercise in general and how healthy that is for the body, or if there is something different happening with running. What do you think? Do you do other forms of exercise and fitness and such, or are you primarily a runner?
No, I do all kinds of working out, and I've had this conversation with other people as well, that are also like they're in the gym as well as they're runners. And I've had this conversation with people that exercise, but they can no longer run, be it an injury or whatever. And they all universally agree that there's something about running that goes beyond. I mean, certainly a gym
Okay.
workout, any hard workout lifts your state of being, but there's something about running that really elevates it beyond anything else.
Interesting. Interesting. I love that. My first exposure to running, I took it as a college credit. My college credit was a jogging class. Um, it's true. Eh, but but I really came to
What do they
appreciate
teach
it at that.
you? The,
He'd
the
have us
athletes,
go
did they
out.
tell you did they tell you to
I
like
don't
walk, but
actually
just a little bit
remember him.
faster?
Yeah, right. I
Yeah,
actually
walk
don't
just a little
remember
bit
him
faster.
teaching.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't remember specifics. I just remember, at that time of the day, that day of the week or several days of the week, you were going running, right? And it didn't matter if it was, and it was in Massachusetts, so it didn't matter if it was raining, snowing, sleeting, sunny, whatever. And I actually ended up really loving that. Like, not letting something like the weather stop you and finding the enjoyment in like running in the rain. It was beautiful. It was just running in the snow. There was just so many things about the seasons and the elements that I feel like a lot of people would probably had avoided, but because it was a class, we did it. And that was one of my greatest memories from it was, running in the elements.
Yeah, no, I love it as well. And people see me running in the rain, and the cars that pass, every single one looks at you, and I often wonder what do they think? They think this guy's crazy, or like, wow, like that's an adventurous person, or I don't know what they think, but yeah, I love running in the elements. I've run a marathon to the South Pole, and I've run a marathon across Death Valley, which is the hottest place on earth in the middle of summer. So I really like, combining these ultra. Yeah.
I just can't even imagine. So like right now it's the heat index here is like 108 and everybody's avoiding being outside, right? Everybody's like, "Oh, it's too hot. I'm not even going outside." And you were running in it. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Um
mean, I will be honest. Although I've run across Death Valley when it's been 126 degrees, it's a dry heat. The heat that you have where you live is,
right.
whoa, that humidity is brutal. Yeah.
Even last night at like 9 o'clock, I stepped outside and it felt like you could literally cut the air. It was so thick and hot. For anybody listening that this all sounds intriguing and maybe they've never run before, there was another time. So, in college, I was enjoying it and running, and then not very far. I mean, it was a few miles each time. But, you fast forward and I hadn't ran in a while. And then I decided I was going to run again. And I didn't get more than a half a block, and to me, and I'm sure this is common knowledge in the running world and especially people starting out, but it's like, okay. And you walk for a little bit and then you run a little bit more. And by the next day or the next week, you're actually running a little bit further, right? And then next thing you know, you can get to that stop sign without stopping. And next thing you know, you can get past it, right? That's what, and I feel like that's another cool thing about running is it's rewarding if you stick to it and you can literally see by distance your accomplishments.
Yeah, if you could just stick with it. I can't agree with you more. I mean, so many people that are not runners go running with me and they can barely run for 5 minutes without stopping. And I'm not even breathing. And they, they get either demoralized or they can't, they don't understand, like, why am I dying? And you're not even, you're not even straining at all. But as your body, I mean, the human body adapts, is quite adaptable. Give it 3 weeks or a month before you start seeing these adaptations. And if you can stick with it, it gets easier.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely see that. There's times where I've jogged with people that are much more experienced than me and an amazement. But, going back to the thoughts, the moment a person starts thinking, I can't do this, or this is too hard, or I'll never get to be like her or him, or, everybody in my family is out of shape. I'm just like them. There's so many different kinds of thoughts that we can have, and they do literally make you have less energy physically. Your thoughts have energy and they affect your strength or even weakness. And another example coming to my mind, I was doing P90X. I don't know if it's still around, but it had just come out. P90X is on TV. I bought it, and I was doing like push-ups and Supermans and all this stuff in my living room. And at that time, my kids were younger and they were bickering, and they were on two different couches, arguing back and forth. And because I had been doing the same like sequence of exercises for a while, I knew how many I could typically do. So let's say 20 push-ups or something. With them arguing, I could literally feel my body felt weaker. Like I didn't feel like I had the strength or ability to do what even I would normally be able to do. And again, I found that really fascinating. Um, Another example that comes to mind is having personal trainers over the years. One personal trainer that's like, you got this muscles and you're so strong and look at you go, but recently last year I had a personal trainer and she was pretty negative, and she would even talk about politics and drama and and this happened here and this happened here and I again could feel that in my body and I had to stop going to her like this isn't going to work out for me. um so again back to your point, so in let's say you're running for um hours, and I know you've been training on quieting your mind. Where are you at in the stage of that? Do thoughts still coming and you have, and meaning, and you can get emotionally attached to them, or are you pretty, spot on with letting them pass?
I'm pretty good at it now. And, I really like ultra marathons because uh, you have to give yourself over to the race, to this event. Like you have to give it your all or you won't succeed, to your point. If you have these negative thoughts, it'll crush you. So unless you can give yourself entirely to this endeavor, you won't succeed. And I've learned that. So I like taking on these challenges. And what I've learned to do, and this is quite, you know, symbolic, is I've literally learned just to put my head down and focus on my next footstep. So when my mind starts wandering, if I start having thoughts of the past or, anxiety about the future, I say, just focus on your next footstep. Take your next footstep to the best of your ability. Okay, take your next footstep. Literally, just click, click, click. It's almost Zen-like, where all I'm thinking about is next footstep, and nothing comes into my mind. And I could do that for 5 or 6 hours. You're almost like in a trance, like it's like a meditation. Well, you probably know about this, where all you and maybe
Yeah.
it's the repetitive, uh, the foot strikes, but it's
Yes.
a way to quiet your mind entirely and just focus on one thing. Mm.
Yeah, I can think of a few times. There was once I was in Oregon and going down, trails and seeing a waterfall or whatever at the bottom. And I don't particularly remember the name of this one, but I was there with my father and it was a 2-hour hike to get back up. And of course, I didn't think about that when I was going down, but to go back up and, being that it was a park, it did have steps. And so, but it was 2 hours of steps. And I did the same thing. I put my head down and I stayed in the moment of every step. And one of I didn't always want to go with my right foot first, so I was working on sometimes left foot, sometimes right foot. But if I lifted my head and looked and how much further and all that, then I could get caught up in those thoughts. So I just go to the steps, and I do that at other times. Like let's say I don't know, I'm at a monument or something and it's something that has a lot of steps. I do the same thing. I just look right down and I go straight into my feet and my legs and I do it one step at a time. So very cool that that's the same technique that you use also.
Yeah, I mean, it's a matter of trying to employ that same mindset when you're driving in traffic, or you're shopping, or other activities. Like, can you bring this same peace and this same tranquility and this same mono focus to other elements of your life outside of an ultra marathon? And I've learned to do that. I've learned to use this toolkit that ultra marathon has given me so that I can navigate through a day more successfully.
That was going to be my next question for you. So give me some examples of how that carries over and where you see it in your life.
I'm reading your mind.
Yeah, you are. I love it.
I knew that was your next question. No, I think that again, when I get into situations where my mind is hyperactive, I bring it back to just literally saying to myself, it's almost like a mantra. I can just say, just take your next footstep and your next footstep. I say that twice, and it just brings me right back to present. Like, okay, execute on the current task at hand. Just be here. Don't be anywhere else. Don't think about anything else, and to quiet my mind.
Yeah, and I bet due to repetition and the frequency of how much you've actually done that, there probably is like a automatic response that for you, especially that the moment you go, one step at a time, you've done that for hours and hours and hours and hours all over the country and have really trained and worked on that as a skill set. So bringing it to life, the rest of your life, it would be pretty quick for you to implement that and have a result from it. Yeah, staying present. Do you find then in your day-to-day life, besides like going into your feet kind of thing, do you find that naturally your mind more frequently is in the present moment and experiencing each moment for what it is?
No, I mean, I think maybe it is more so than the average person, but I'm still finding myself having to, bring it back to, hey, don't, you're wandering, come back to the present. So I still remind myself. I think I'm just more aware of when I start to drift, than someone who hasn't like done this sort of exercise through, hundreds of marathons and ultra marathons.
Right, right.
I mean, I think,
So,
you know,
mhm,
I think that for me to take care of myself by myself is easy. I mean, to me, I don't want to belittle someone who's monastic, but the issue is other people. I can be very comfortable with myself living my own bubble, and I can find my peace. But to be a functioning member of a broader society, you're forced to interact with other people, and their wavelength is not always the same as yours. So it's a matter of keeping your cool, when you're around people that are not so present, and remembering, don't get caught up in this, and to be yourself.
right, right. Nice. I was just looking through some of your info here. How often are you still running and doing marathons now?
Almost every weekend.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Tell me about this whole coyote situation.
Oh, I mean, that was a rare incident, and it was an unfortunate incident. But I was running on the trails where I've run, many, many times, maybe hundreds of times, and I've seen coyotes all over, but I've never had one come at me. But one came at me, and I think it was largely, as a result of COVID. When COVID hit, a lot of people were feeding the coyotes like energy bar, like
Oh, God.
human food. So they were getting a little more aggressive. And yeah, that's yeah.
Jeez.
I
Have
don't
you
want to
had
blame the coyote, but I think it just I had an energy bar in my hand at the time, and maybe it was in close proximity, and yeah, one thing led to the next.
any other encounters with animals on any of your other runs?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen, many rattlesnakes. I've almost stepped on many rattlesnakes. Wild boar. I've been running, seen wild boar, certainly bears. Yeah, if you're going to run out in nature, you're going to have encounters. But I mean, I'll say that, the worst encounters I've ever had are with domestic dogs. I mean, that's worse than any wild animal. And if you run on road, then it's the drivers. The drivers are way
Right.
worse than wild animals. They are wild animals. Yeah.
I often, whether it's somebody running or riding a street bike, I just don't know how they do it nowadays because you, just as a driver myself, I can look over and see how frequently people are on cell phones. And talking to truck drivers, they say they see it, practically constantly. Does that go through your mind as far as, change in times? Like it's not just a
For sure.
driver now that might be careless. It could be a driver.
I try to avoid running on the road as much as I can, but when I'm running on the road, I'm hyper astute. I mean, I've run across America. Actually, I ran one time from Los Angeles to New York City. Yeah, there's a lot of bad behavior taking place out there. Keeps you alert.
Yeah. Yeah. So have you heard of the zone? Are you familiar with the
Of course,
concept
of
of the
course.
zone? And would you say that that's the state you're in? Hmm.
Yes.
How
Zone,
would you
flow.
define it?
I think flow is
Yeah.
this is the same concept, and it's when you're so uh, in the moment, you're so caught up in what you're doing that you forget about self. you unself. You're a conscious observer of something else. You're not yourself. And I get those feelings when I run. And I mean, I think for someone who's watching or listening to this interview, I mean, think about watching a really good movie where you're so wrapped up in in the narrative, in the story, and it's so exciting and compelling that you forget about everything else. And that's what I feel like when I go running.
Nice. Yeah. That's again one of the things I actually train people in how to experience. And I've come across those that debate the concept of like you can't create the zone. You can't contribute to it happening. There's people that and so-called experts that would say that it's just spontaneous, and I disagree with that. And listen, even talking to you are deliberate about what you're doing with your mind and experiencing the zone flow state. Have you ever thought about how are you related to like spirituality? Do you believe in your spirit, soul, energy of who you are?
Well, I'll start by saying I think I told you I'm Greek, so I'm in Athens, Greece right now, and I mean I've read extensively the ancient text on you know the soul, the existence of the soul. Uh, let's just say I'm still wandering. I'm still trying to the transcendence of the soul beyond the body. I mean, this is something the Greeks, at least the early Greeks, very much believed in. This
Yeah.
transmigration. I don't know. I'm still seeking. Let's say that. Am I a spiritual guy? I think deeply so. Am I a religious person? Not in the sense of modern religion. I mean, I'm Greek Orthodox, and I studied Orthodoxy, but I'm still somewhat agnostic when it comes to organized religion. I mean, some of the
Yeah.
ancient texts of the First Testament, especially the Greek texts, are profound, but it's not so much about some God who gave us a son and we you know eat his flesh and drink his blood when we go to communion. So it's something beyond that, but I'm definitely a seeker. Yeah.
Yeah, I consider myself more spiritual than religious too, but somewhat even obsessed, meaning that I've spent about 30 years trying to understand from every angle, like like an investigator, like how can I learn what is spirit and what is this afterlife or blah, 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 blah. And it's obsessed. So it's been a long time. And what I find really fascinating is that what we call the zone state, first of all, what we call the zone state and the way that we define it is the same way that a client in hypnosis would define being in hypnosis. And that was my first like parallel that I experienced because I'd been a hypnotist a lot longer than I'd been working with athletes. So when I was hearing the same words, like time flies by, everything around you disappears. It didn't even feel like me, hitting the ball, pulling the trigger or whatever. It felt euphoric. All these words. And then people like totally separate coming out of hypnosis would say, wow, I can't believe how much time just went by. No, I didn't hear the ambulances going. I was like totally in the moment. It felt euphoric, and I was like, what in the heck? And then now I add on to that even further so you've got your conscious mind and you've got this physical body, right? And if you're a believer in the spirit, that would mean I'm a spiritual being having a physical experience, right? Because energy, you can't create or destroy it or whatever. So this energetic being exists and it's having a physical experience because the physical body will rot. So what I'm starting to see is that when you are disconnected from who you are, you're actually connected to the real you. And the real you meaning I am out of ego mind. I'm out of this physical body. I'm totally as my spiritual self experiencing this moment. And to me, that makes it even more profound and fascinating and amazing and beautiful and all these things, because it would be our physical self and our thinking mind that could potentially get in our way. But again, like we were already talking, whether it's thinking about the past, the future, over analyzing, trying too hard, trying to make things happen. And if you can eliminate those more physical body, ego, mind type stuff, you're back to the basics, the powerful basics of who you really are. And I think that's a lot of what athletes are experiencing. And that's why it doesn't feel like it's them, because we define ourselves as our conscious mind. You know, when I make something happen, when I force something, and when you practice like you have so many times to get out of that, then you're back to your natural state and your true self. So you're out of your temporary self and you're into your true self. I think that's pretty cool. That's where
Yeah, no,
peak
I mean,
performance is.
yeah, and separating your physical body from your consciousness, that's a whole other discussion. But I mean, I think there's some essential uncoupling when you go into the zone or this flow state. I am the physical body is somewhat separate and distinct from the ego, and I don't know what happens to your consciousness when you go into flow, but it's definitely altered. I mean, it's not the same as when you're bombarded with the heaviness of being you.
Yeah, yeah. So again, studies have shown approximately 10 years ago that what athletes call the zone state is conscious mind in alpha. And what that just basically means is when we're measuring conscious mind, and I say that deliberately loud because subconscious is different. So your conscious mind is the chatter. And so when we're in beta, measured by brainwave activity, um, beta is where we are living most of the time. Like there's a lot of thinking. You might be planning your future. You might think about what happened this morning. Like there's all this activity. And so when you quiet that, the next stage down, just by measuring on a scale, we just define it as alpha. The next below that, which is a little bit less conscious mind activity, a little bit quieter conscious mind, is what we call theta. And then below that is what we call sleep or delta. So every human passes through this just in the process of the conscious mind going to sleep and in the process of the conscious mind waking back up. So what you've mastered is coming out of beta into at least alpha and maybe even theta when you're running, which is simply less conscious activity, but also super familiar because you do it every time you go to sleep and every time you wake up. And hypnosis and meditation happen to be alpha theta too. Like you might be in light relaxation, light hypnosis, light meditation. You might be in deep relaxation, deep hypnosis, deep meditation. And so you've mastered the bridging into this. And what I was going to say is studies have shown that athletes say the zone state. No, not say that when they are having their best performance, whether it's a golfer or that peak performance state, the measurements on the EKG is alpha. And that's what you're doing.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
certainly
yeah, yeah.
ultra marathoning is different than other sports that are somewhat like games, like a game of golf or a game of tennis. Um, that's quite a bit different when you talk about an athlete, but I imagine it's somewhat the same. But there's a lot of route memorization, I think, that goes into learning, how to swing a golf club or how to serve a tennis, with a tennis racket. But ultra running, I think, is somewhat distinct, but maybe not so far separated.
Yeah. I'm following you. Yep. Um, so, what's some of your next goals? Because you've accomplished a lot. What are you working on next?
Well, I mean, one, I'm trying to continue running marathons, in my 60s, 70s, and even 80s. So, certainly longevity is a big part of what I'm working on now. So, building myself to last. But as far as adventures, I'm planning to try to run from the lowest point on Earth to the highest point on Earth. So I have another friend who's another ultra marathoner, Charlie Engel, and it was his idea. Let's run from the Dead Sea in Jordan to the top of Mount Everest. And Charlie's a little
What
crazy,
the
so
hell?
I'm like, all right, he's crazy, but I'll join him. I'm
All
crazy
right.
too. Yeah. So
Uh,
that's the next adventure.
Unfathomable, but super
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. What's one piece of advice, magic pill, wisdom, whatever, wisdom of your years, like one piece of advice that just comes to mind that you'd pass on right now.
Keep a curious mind. Try to view the world through the eyes of a child. And that's a good
Nice.
way to stay in flow state, is just be very curious.
Yes. I like that. I like that. I do want to tell listeners that they can get some free goodies, opt-ins related to my mental training online course for athletes, or my Mind Mastered app, or even at my Shotgun Club in Northeast Florida. You just go to dawngrant.com/free, and definitely follow me on social media. I do regular videos that with free tips and free information. So, Dean, can you give us some contact info, a website? People, can they reach out to you? Social media? What do you got for us?
Someone told me that if you Google Dean, I'm the first Dean that comes up. To Google Dean Karnazes, and I've got a website. I'm on social
Nice.
media. I've written a handful of books, so you can find my books, whatever you might be looking for. Yeah.
I love the titles of your books. They all sound super intriguing. Yeah, great titles, and I'm sure they're full of great information.
Yeah, I have a website. I mean, I'm on social media. You can find my book. I've written like a handful of books, and so you can find my books. And one thing I will suggest to any of the viewers or listeners is try an audiobook. If you really want to like put yourself out of yourself, maybe try it. My latest book is called A Runner's High, and I really wrote it to be meditative so that you can listen to this audiobook and get really caught up in the story and forget about everything else. And I do this quite a bit. I probably have 500 audiobooks on my playlist.
Yes, I'm a huge audiobook fan, huge. But I love all the titles of your books. They're all, look and sound very intriguing, and definitely make me want to read them all. It sounds fascinating. Or listen. We drive a lot for the work that we do. So I'm definitely will get some of your audiobooks. So thank you for sharing your wisdom, Dean, and your insights and your story and your inspiration. I really have enjoyed talking with you. Thanks for being here.
Likewise. Thanks for having me run by.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in to the Mind Mastered Secrets of Excellence with Don Grant. Whether you're an elite athlete or pursuing success in your career or personal life, Don Grant's expertise and insights are here to guide you. Don't forget to visit dawngrant.com/free to grab your exclusive free resources, hypnosis audios, mental training tools, and even a golf cart at her club. If you enjoyed today's episode, follow, rate, and share this podcast. Stay connected with Dawn on all social media platforms for more inspiration, tips, and updates. Remember, mastering your mind is the key to unlocking your full potential. Until next time, keep pushing your limits and striving for excellence.